My Life Illustrated by Raphael Katz. Chapter 2, 1970. New York City, Lower East Side. New Year's Eve 1969, I was at St.Marks Church, which is a center for arts, poetry, and the place where punk really took off or built up its culture in on the East Village of Manhattan. As a friend and I, the friend's name was Mimi, walked into the church close to midnight in 1969, the Velvet Underground was playing a loud, droning rock. I didn't know who they were at the time. Two drug-addled revelers hoisted us onto their shoulders and started careening around the dance floor, and it felt quite dangerous to me to be bouncing on this guy's shoulders. As the clock struck 12 midnight, a performance artist painted the word pig in bright red house paint on his collaborator's ass. That rang in the new decade and rang in the new year. Happy New Year, happy decade, happy new decade. People were chanting. New York's Lower East Side, East Village was alive with ideals and potential for me at that point. 1970 had begun. I was lucky enough to be able to spend some weekends with family friends from way back in Italy, the Schneemans. Their apartment on St. Mark's Place was actually a hub for the New York School of Poets. Other artists, too, also frequented their apartment. They came to play poker, they ate pasta, they drank wine, and they talked about whatever they wanted to talk about: poetics, politics, sports, etc. The dad's name was George Schneeman, and he was a painter. Since it was a small apartment, his studio was right in the middle of the apartment between the two of the bedrooms. That year, Dad also took me to a Philip Glass concert in an empty warehouse before Philip Glass became a well known musician and composer. I remember we sat on pieces of foam on the floor. Philip Glass and a few other musicians with keyboards were playing so loudly. That's the main thing I remember about it. I couldn't really distinguish the music from the noise because it was too loud. I just watched Philip Glass slowly raise his head and then drop it like a tomahawk suddenly. His Jufro would wobble, and he would repeat that pattern as the music played on and on for what to me seemed like a long time. The Lower East Side was the home of a lot of Jewish people. Dad had another friend who also happened to be an avant garde composer, Steve Reich. We attended Passover Seder at his apartment in 1970. Passover is an important Jewish holiday that recounts the troubled history of the Jewish people. We memorialize the hardships and the triumphs of the Jews during the Seder meal. As the youngest son, I had a big role. I asked the attendees uh, around the table questions like, why is this night different from all other nights? One of the musicians that collaborated with Steve Reich, a blind saxophonist, lent his witty repartee to the Seder, I remember. I had never really been up close and seen a blind person before, so I was kind of fascinated by him as he was eating the meal. I live in Shanghai these days as I'm doing this illustrated autobiography. I think I developed my taste for anonymously walking down bustling city streets back in the East Village way back then, but I still like it today. And it's nothing nicer to me than walking down a busy city street with people of all backgrounds, shapes, and sizes. That was the East Village. George Schneeman, Philip Glass, Steve Reich.